And we are so glad to have Josh Rowe back with us this week. Josh, an amazing trip to Vietnam, a very special assignment for Price of Freedom, and just an amazing learning experience that you had there, it sounds like.
Perspective changing. Boy, I could sit here, we could tell stories the whole show, we really could. But we spent 6 full days there, and a part of days on each end there. And the last day I was there, I had a conversation with one of the organizers there, a retired Marine Corps Major, Chuck Casey. And he said a line to me, and he said, you know, Vietnam is a country, it's not a war. That said, the war 50 years ago has had profound impacts on both our country and that country. Here are some of the photos that we captured while we were over there in that country. And that is kind of the premise of what we're going to talk about, you know, over the next several weeks with this coverage. The country itself. What we should know about that, and the impacts of this country and on our veterans here and on veterans there, and beyond those things about the war. We went over there with the family of a Medal of Honor recipient, Sergeant Rodney Davis. It was amazing to see their experience there, because like a lot of families who lost loved ones in the war, he was killed in action. There's a lot of healing to be done, and a lot of emotions around that. I went with a couple of people who fought in the war and their interactions there, and so a lot of things just around the idea of what do we need to know today. And
so many people we know from hearing those veteran stories through the Price of Freedom, and through people that we do know talk about how it wasn't talked about, and the reaction they got when they got home. And so I'm sure for so many of them, being able to talk so freely now and telling some of the things they couldn't back then, didn't feel comfortable, didn't feel welcome to say.
It's a giant part of the story of how when these folks came home, how there wasn't a lot of direct healing. It was move on with your life. Kind of tuck it away somewhere and not talk about it. Now this picture here, this is going to be the first real piece that we're going to roll out sometime before I lay my head on my pillow tomorrow night. I'll have a podcast episode of that event right there, and that there are veterans in Vietnam who fought in the war, and American veterans, some from the war and some since then, and a meeting and a conversation they had that really was fascinating. A lot of it around specifically the things that have happened that affect American veterans, such as Agent Orange exposure. Think about that. The people who were there who were affected by that, and we know those stories, right? Okay, all the years since, that dioxin, those chemicals are still there in that soil for a lot of reasons, and we'll get into some of that, and beyond that. There's a lot of just different parts of that story and different things to consider when it comes to the effects on that country the last 50 plus years.
Well, we are so glad to have you back, but so excited to hear and see all of what you got to see and what you learned.
We have a lot of work still to do, and a lot to come, so stay tuned for that for sure. All right, coming up.